Hello. First, I'd like to apologize for the fact that this is late. It's been a wild, crazy week, and there was a long period of time when my laptop was closed with a wasp inside of it. Right now, my house is somehow infested with wasps. I don't know where they're getting it from. We're trying to figure that out. But one crawled onto my computer while I was working, and I freaked out and closed it and didn't open it until I knew it was dead and not angry. So that's just a little glimpse into the wild craziness of this week. But I am back in full swing, so here is my Excel report. This one was using a spreadsheet to demonstrate the difference between theoretical and empirical probability. Theoretical probability is based on reasoning and written as a ratio of the number of favorable outcomes to the number of possible outcomes. On here, I have it, I forgot to go back and change it, but it says 18 of 16, like of, instead of an actual fraction, because I forgot that you could just change it up here from general or from text to fraction. Because every time I put it in, I was trying to put a date and it was making me really frustrated. So that's how it was. And then empirical probability is formed through observations and experiments and is a likelihood of a particular event, the likelihood that a particular event will happen based on the results of the data collected. So this is the theoretical probability of rolling two dice and getting an even sum and a prime product and a multiple of 3 sum and a product of 12. You are 50% odds of getting an even sum, and everything else, the odds are against you. Unless you're like, oh, what are the odds? I'll get any one of these. Then the odds are in your favor, and you're still only by 1%, because it's 51% chance of that. So yeah, there's all those numbers, all of that figured. And here's the empirical probability from randomly rolling two dice so many times. There's the box and whisker plots, the tables, the charts, all 6,000 rows. It's crazy, crazy stuff going on over here. But the difference in the two is that theoretical is based solely on reasoning, while the empirical is much more scientific, and as you can see, there's a lot more that went into this one than there was for the theoretical. And as the sample size increases, the odds began to level out a lot more in the empirical. And it's because that's just what it does. More chance that you're gonna get the same things over and over again once you've done it 6,000 times. So that's the probability page. Here's my binomial one, where we use binomial experiments and expected outcomes to decide whether to believe reports from the sources that we trust. So here we have, let me go to what you want before I start explaining this. Binomial distribution is only ever between two numbers, therefore it's not continuous as normal distribution is. A binomial experiment has to have a fixed number of trials. Each trial is independent from each other, and there are only two outcomes, and the probability of each outcome remains consistent from trial to trial. So there's a lot of things that go in that are factored into whether or not you can even use a binomial experiment for something. So yeah, we did this to see what the probability of getting an 80 on a multiple choice question multiple choice test would be if you just completely guessed and the odds are not in your favor. You have a 0.04% chance of getting an 80 if you just guess. So like, congrats to that student that guessed and got an 80, but for the other student, if you're not too, they weren't real familiar with the, what is this word? With the content that's going to be on a test, then they should probably study at least a little bit if they want to make an 80. And then the second half, the bottom half, the bigger graphs and things, is lottery ticket information, like how much you could get from it and what you wouldn't. So the overall buyer's expected outcome is negative 193. So if you have gone and you've bought a million, I don't know what the number of this is actually. If you went and you bought a whole bunch of lottery tickets, like you won some, you lost some, like won some good money, you're still likely to have lost $1.93. Which that's good news for the sellers of the lottery tickets, bad news for buyers. Good news for the sellers is that based on that outcome, if they were to sell 5 million tickets, they would have over a $9 million coming in. So the next question is, where does that money go? Here in Arkansas, I couldn't find any exact numbers for any, like, I couldn't find exact anything. The closest thing to confirmation of where this money goes that I found was an interview with the guy who's in charge of all the lottery stuff. And he confirmed that everything that is made in profit, so everything over what goes back into the lottery for the winnings and what was used to pay their employees, goes back to scholarships. So even though you are losing money when you buy lottery tickets, at least you're supporting a good cause. I know I've gotten money from it, and probably every student taking this class has gotten some money from the Arkansas Scholarship Lottery. And then I also chose Texas and Michigan, and these are the pie charts from those. And you see that like over 60% goes back into the prize pool, which is crazy. That like over 60% of $9 million is actually being won by people like every year. That's insane. But yeah, this is kind of the breakdown for some other states if you wanted to look more in depth in that. And it's important to understand expected outcomes to make informed decisions, because if you don't know, you can make a really bad decision because you're underinformed. Like the student could have easily been like, oh, you got an 80 and you just guessed. Cool, I'll just guess too. But when you do the math and you find out that he is like a miracle because less than 1% of people who do this are going to get that same result, he probably would have done it. But if he had looked at the math, looked at the findings here, he might be like, oh, let me study for a little bit before I go hang out with you. And then the lottery went, and like, you see, you're losing a lot of money. You're projected that you're not going to gain anything. You're going to still lose some even when you win. So it just helps you make informed decisions. Like, you know where your money's going now because of this. So yeah, there's that. Moving on to interests and loans and all these good things. We said, what if you and your spouse were to invest $3,600 into a savings account? How much would you have at the end of 10 years with these different options for interest on the savings account. With simple interest, obviously you get less money in the end, but you know how much you're getting every time, and you end up with less than 6,000. When you do any sort of compound, you ended up with over 6,000 after 10 years, and still a bit more when you did the quarterly compound. So that's all laid out for you here. But interest is money paid regularly at a set rate for use of money lent or for the delaying of the repayment of a debt. Simple interest is based on the initial amount, while compound interest is based on the current balance of the account or the current balance that you owe, depending on what it's for. And so the benefit of using eating out money as extra payment on your mortgage is that your mortgage gets paid off a lot faster and decreases the total amount you pay back through the interest in the end. So like it's always good to pay more if you can on your loans, whether it's mortgage or it's student loan, whatever it is, it's good to pay extra. It reduces how much you pay overall in the long run. And then subsidized loans, interest is paid back while the student, or the interest is paid by the government while the student is still in school. While an unsubsidized loan, the government does not pay that interest, and so the student, even though they don't have to pay until after they've graduated, that interest is still racking up, that they have to pay that. So like a lot of times you have the option to like only pay the interest. Like you can do that and it makes it cheaper, but like there's so many different ways you can do it. But there's some pros and cons of paying the interest. If you're paying interest only, like you're keeping your stuff at the same level, and so like you're just paying more. But then like if you were to do that on a subsidized loan where you don't have to pay the loan, like you're saving some, but like you're still paying the interest. Like it's hard to explain, but there are lots of pros and cons. If you're paying payments and interest, you're going to be paying a lot less than if you are just paying the payment or if you're just paying the interest. Like, if you're just paying the payment and not paying on the interest, then like the amount of interest goes down each time, but like it's still there and still adding up and adding on to the end. So if you want to pay your payment and interest, then like ultimately you're gonna pay less because you are paying more upfront. It's tricky, but that's the best way I know how to explain it. And here's the gathering data from populations and samples. The first thing we looked at on this one was the percent of Americans that are Republicans, Independent, or Democrats or unknown based on this population right here. That's the current population when I did this, not up online. And then based on the information that Professor Brinsley gave us, 26% Republicans, 46% claim to be independent, which blows my mind. I think recently that's the highest it's ever been, unless I'm just really uneducated, but like that's crazy to me, because I always thought it was closer to 50-50 Republican Democrat with like a smaller amount independent, but it's kind of opposite, which is wild. There's 27% Democrats, and then so took that with the population to find the number of people, projected number of people for those categories. And then I looked to see how many, what percentage of Republicans were supportive of Trump and what that were not, and the same for the Independent and the Democrats. And these are the charts for those. So 87% Republicans approve, as you'd kind of expect, and 90% of Democrats just disapprove. And it's closer to even on the Independent, but still more lean to disapprove. And there's the numbers on that you guys can read. And then puts it in the pie chart so you can just kind of see it. Disapprove is orange, approve is blue, and then no data is so gray. So overall, I feel like people don't approve of Trump. That's okay. And the second set of data we looked at was military stuff. I had a really hard time not saying army, just because like my dad was in the military, but he's in the army, so like everything kind of revolved around that growing up. But yeah, it's kind of color coded by just the colors that automatically put it in the stacked graph, but I figured I'd make it universal throughout the thing just so it's easier to read. There more of the people in the military, like a bigger percentage of people in the military are in the army than any other one. And we have almost 500,000 people in the army, which is great. Love to have many people fighting for our country. Thank you to anybody who served. In any capacity, whether it was in the Army, the Navy, Air Force, Marines, anything. Thank you for your service. So there's more people are in the Army than the other ones. And then so you'd think that there'd be more women in, or like you'd think that that proportion would be the same, like a bigger percentage of women would be in the Army than the other ones, but that's not true. The biggest percentage of women is tied at 19% women in the Navy and in the Air Force, enlisted, not talking officers and office positions. So yeah, there's that. But there still are more head counts of women in the Army just because it's out of a bigger number, bigger population, that sample. So yeah, that's why we got this. This is the percentages. And this is like the actual number of men and women. It was really interesting. I like learning about it. And this 3D graphing one, this one was fun. 3D graphing is just like 2D graphing, but with an added plane. So instead of just an X and Y axis, you have X, Y, and say a Z axis. This is how, like, I'm pretty familiar with this kind of stuff because we use things like this a lot more in interior design, which is what I'm going into. So like all of our CAD drawings and SketchUp animations are done in 3D. Essentially, it's a 3D graph. It's not quite like this at all, but like that's kind of the hardware, the computer science behind the programs I use. But these specific numbers that I have put in all over the screen, those create these graphs based on the value for each spot. Just like how you make a topographic map. Topographic, I don't really know how to say that, but it's like that. And if you ever played Minecraft, I never really play it all the time. It kind of reminds me of that, like where it says 7, you have like 7 stacks, and 6 is 6 stack. Like it's like that. It's the way you'd make those maps. Changing one value somewhere on here may or may not change your view depending on where in the chart, you change the value and what angle you're looking at it from. You were to change one thing in the example one, I did not mean to do that, this big crazy thing way over here, you're probably more likely to see it just because it's all the same than you would be on one of mine, which are kind of just random crazy. It's like a little island that makes you think it's Spy Kids. I love it. Okay. Yeah, so depending on where you're looking at it, you may or may not see that you changed it. Which that's because of the angle and the perspective. And depending on the angle and the perspective, it can change the image anyways, because not all the sides are the same. And from different angles and perspectives, you can make certain areas look bigger or smaller than they actually are. I relate to this a lot because I have to create perspective drawings for school all the time. And the hardest part of that is always finding the perfect angle to show the space in the most realistic perspective, because it's so easy to skew it and get things out of proportion just because the perspective is off. Which you can kind of see in this one, like this is square, but it doesn't look square because of the angle, the perspective that it's at. It makes it look more like this instead of like this. And even with my hands, so you can see that there. But the different perspective helps to make decisions. It really does. We use this a lot, like in interior design when we're doing layouts. We will look at it from a million different perspectives to see if where we have things really is the most efficient and the most flowing way that we can do something. So it really does help in making decisions practically and mathematically if this is something that you would be doing. And then back to the 5-year plan. I didn't include it in my last video because it said not to. This one also says not to, but I learned to put it in. So this was talking about the mortgage getting more in depth than that. And I was kind of confused on that third one. I just had to take a lot of information from. I am very familiar with mortgages and how they work because me and my dad are always brainstorming about like, oh, we can invest in that, and like this is how much it would cost to pay it off, and like all this stuff. So I'm very familiar with how they work in real life, but putting them on an Excel really confuses me. So I took this and looked more into the different types of loans and like what I would be doing based on the plan that I've gotten written out here. It's all hypothetical. Very dependent on if I get it on here or not, which honestly probably won't happen, just because that's so far out in my mind. But keeping it all based on that, this is what I have. The three main mortgage options are conventional, interest only, and ARM. Conventional is just like a fixed rate, so like you're gonna pay the same thing every month. It's available in a 10, 15, 20, 30, or 40 year. With 15 and 30 years being the most common, probably 30 the most common. And then interest only is when you only pay the interest for the first 5 or 10 years, depending on what you decide with your loan servicer. I said loan servicer, like the student loan, with your mortgage company. And then after that 5 or 10 years, whatever a lot of time you decided upon, it switches over to a conventional loan, so you're just paying the same thing. Because making payments on the actual loan, not just the interest anymore. And then ARM is adjustable rate mortgage, ARM. But really, if you choose your mortgage company, a select amount of time that you have a really great interest rate, like really low, it's rocking. But after that 5 to 10 years, it's gonna be whatever the heck they want it to be, because they can change it, like in the contract said, after this many years, the rate is subject to change. So basically, like the first 5 years you have a fixed rate, and then the next 25 years of your mortgage, you have a dynamic rate, which means it can change at any given time, and it can go ridiculously high, or I could say closer to lower, but normally it gets ridiculously high. So I do not recommend an ARM. Conventional is your best bet unless you qualify for FHA, which is um, Federal Housing Association, or I think it's Federal Housing Association for their mortgage, or you qualify for VA, which is what my family always uses, where you get you don't have a down payment, which is great, amazing, and typically you get lower interest rates as well with that. So that's really nice. And then there's a couple other ones that are really random, like the piggyback and the balloon, and there's one more, and the jumbo. I don't really know what those are. I didn't look into them too much because those are very few and far between that people use them. So I went in and I updated this. You said to update our time management and our food management. Honestly, I did a lot of work on my time management when I first made it, and I'm not quite sure how to put my crazy random of food habits into charts. So mine is based off of the food pyramid, and I didn't really know how to change that anymore either. So instead I went and I changed all of my charts and graphs for each place I wanted to live to match my new budget, because I chose to use a conventional mortgage, and just because we could afford it based on what hypothetically we'll be making, I can afford a 10-year, and then it's paid off faster and we're done with it. So I've updated my budget from a 30-year conventional to a 10-year conventional, because it had already been, like, I had already calculated it for a 30-year, because that's typical. So over here, I left it at the 30-year just so you can see the difference. But here in these charts, I've updated the mortgage to really high, really like pretty expensive mortgage for the house that I selected for each of those places. Each, my words, they're not working today. But for each of the places, and that's how it affected it in the bar graphs and in the pie charts. As you can see, obviously Tennessee was the most expensive of my 3 places, where my mortgage would be a whole 19% of our monthly income, which is wild. But I mean, it'd be over in 10 years, so it's fine. Hopefully we'd live in the same place for 10 years. It's something I have yet to do, is live in a house for 10 years, but maybe one day I'll have that consistency. Hopefully. So that's at 19%. 13 and 15, Florida's the cheapest place for me to live. Yeah, and then that's my weekly time management and daily food. Thanks for watching. That's not what I wanted to click.